Hi, thank you for joining me on my program today. I think it's an important one that God has given to me for me to share with all of you. I've entitled it, Who Will Cross the Line? And so I want to begin reading in the book of Daniel today. Daniel chapter 3. And I'll read it and I'll talk about it because there's too much for us to go on in the reading. But Daniel chapter 3 talks about King Nebuchadnezzar, and he had built a golden image. My guess is it looked exactly like him. And he had built this golden image, and all of his government officials, whether they be city, state, local, national, they all gathered for a meeting with him. And I think they convinced him that he should make them all bow before him whenever they played certain sounds, certain music pieces. And let's just look, let's pick up in verse 4. Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages." So we know it went more than just in the local area. The time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning, fiery furnace. There were 3 Hebrew children that had kind of been promoted within King Nebuchadnezzar's government rule. But the local folks politicians, let's call them that, who had talked King Nebuchadnezzar into writing this decree, came immediately and said, "You know those 3 Hebrew children, those boys, those Jewish boys? Well, they're not bowing down to you, King. When all that music takes place, they don't bow down. They're not bowing to you." Well, the king got mad. And so he said, "Bring those boys to me." And I love it in verse 14. Let's pick up there. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, now he's talking to those 3 boys, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now, if you're ready at the time that you hear the sound of the horn and all this music, and you fall down and you worship the image which I've made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning, fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands?" Well, first of all, such ignorance, arrogance, and pride that we see in King Nebuchadnezzar. He had convinced himself that he was really all that. He was important. Folks, when we begin to place ourselves in front of God Almighty, we're in big trouble. When we begin to think that people are everywhere, will simply drop God for them, King Nebuchadnezzar had some rude awakening coming. 15. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into that fiery furnace. And who will deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter." Folks, there's some things we don't even have to answer. They're just that stupid. Some things that come so blatant against our God doesn't even require an answer. Remember that. Sometimes just keeping our mouth shut is best, and then just watch what God will do. Verse 17, I love this. If that is the case, in other words, if you really are going to throw us in the fiery furnace, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not worship, we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. No matter what it appears on the surface that our future may hold, we will stand on the side of the Lord. Now I want to share with you, take a little break point here, and I want to share with you a vision that the Lord gave me back in January the 2nd of 2016. In that early morning hours, probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, over the course of several days, nights, the Lord gave me vision, and then he would add to that vision the next night, and the next night, and the next night. But at the very beginning of that vision, this is sort of the way it started. I saw the Lord. I was standing right there, as almost like we were talking, and I saw him take a stick off the ground. He reached down, he picked up a stick, and it was a sandy ground, and he drew this line in the sand. And then he looked at me and he said, "Who will cross this line?" And I knew that he meant this is not going to be an easy thing for those who cross. They must take a stand. If they took a stand and they crossed that line, and he didn't put one foot on either side, he stood on one side alone. And at first he was absolutely alone. And he said, "Who will stand with me? Who will cross this line and stand with me?" And I knew that it meant leaving others behind, that they would not cross. But in that vision, I crossed over and I said, "Oh Lord, I will stand with you." And then he began to talk to me, and he said, "There's going to be a roll call." I wasn't certain what he meant, but I'm a retired teacher. I knew that roll call meant who's with me today, who's here. First of all, to even call the name, your name has to be on the roll. And he said, "I will take roll call and call everyone's name, and either they have crossed this line and they are with me or they are not." Wow, that was powerful, because look at the world we're in today. God still calls roll. That vision is more alive today than ever. There is a roll call. At first I thought that it meant who's saved, who's not saved, who's going to, when the day of judgment comes, whose name will be in the book of life. Well, yes, that's true. That is a roll call. But this was more prevalent for where we are right now. He was really referring, I believe, to earth time. Who will stand on the side of the Lord? Now, what is the side of the Lord? Well, it's his word. Who will stand with his word? Who will refuse to... See, compromise is trying to keep one foot on one side of the line and one foot on the other side of the line. No, it is who will cross this line and stand with me. And so that vision was given to me, and I see it as powerful. It is something that just burns in my spirit as relevant for today. Going back to those 3 Hebrew children they were in fact placed into that fiery furnace. When we cross that line, folks, doesn't mean there won't be things happening to us all around us. It means we're on the side of the Lord and we intend to stay there, and so did those 3 Hebrew children. They made it known. They said, "Oh, King, whatever you got to do, you do it, but we're standing on the side of the Lord." And he did throw them in. In fact, he was so mad he had that furnace heated up 7 times more. And the poor soldiers that had to carry those 3 boys into the fiery furnace, the heat was so much it killed them instantly. They threw them in, and they landed on the floor. 3:24. Oh, and by the way, when they threw them in, I suspect the king and all those little tattletalers that said, "Look, they're not bowing." I suspect that they thought, the end. We'll just move forward now. The end. In today's world, as I am taping this program, it could look like the end. God always has the end, and we need to remember that. Man never calls the end, God does. In verse 23, and these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, remember the rude awakening, saying, and he arose in haste and spoke and sang to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." "Look," he answered, "I see 4 men, loose," they're not bound, loose, "walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." Then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning furnace and spoke, saying, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Do you notice how his tone has now changed? Servants of the Most High God. Just scriptures but before that, and he said, "And who is the God who will deliver you?" Well, now he knows. Servants of the Most High God. Come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire. And the satraps, administrators, governors, and king's counselors gathered together, and they saw these men on whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of fire was not on them. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and they have frustrated the king's word, and yielded their bodies that they should not serve nor worship any god except their own God." Who is your God today would be my question. Who is your God? Have you crossed that line drawn in the sand? There has been a line drawn in the sand. We would have our head in the sand if we didn't know that. There has been one drawn in the sand, the line in the sand. Have you crossed and stood on the side of the Lord, His Word? If you have, maybe you feel like you're in that fiery furnace, but you're not alone. And no smoke will come on you. No fire is able to burn you. Ephesians 6:13. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. The Lord gave me the vision in 2016 because there would be a time when I needed to remember the line in the sand. And even the story of the fiery furnace and the 3 Hebrew children, we may be called to do the same in our own way. When you stand on the side of the Lord, no power on earth will pull you from that side of the Lord, and He will be with you all the way through. I pray that you'll trust Him today. Stand in faith. Don't give up. Don't go backward. Stand, having done all, to stand. Thank you for being with me today. I pray that blessings upon you and your life